In today's video, we are going to explore the key characteristics and differences among 6 distinct biological categories, namely animals, plants, fungi, protists, bacteria, and viruses. The purpose of this discussion is to give you a broad overview of what these groups represent, so do not worry about memorizing every individual fact or term. The idea is to develop an understanding of how these groups vary from each other in form, function, and structure. If we put viruses to one side for a moment, we are left with the 5 kingdoms of life, which are animals, plants, fungi, protists, and bacteria. These 5 categories together include nearly all known living organisms on Earth. Viruses, however, are quite different because, as we will learn, they are not actually living organisms and therefore are not included in any of the biological kingdoms. One important distinction to understand before we look at each group in detail is the difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic organisms. The kingdoms of animals, plants, fungi, and protists are all composed of eukaryotic cells, which means their cells have a distinct nucleus containing DNA in the form of chromosomes. These cells are typically complex and contain specialized structures called organelles that carry out specific functions such as energy production or protein synthesis. In contrast, bacteria are prokaryotic organisms, which means they are made of simpler cells that do not contain a nucleus. Their DNA floats freely within the cell, and they are significantly smaller, usually about 10 to 100 times smaller than eukaryotic cells. Viruses are not classified as cells at all, and are even smaller still by another factor of 10 to 100 times. To help you imagine this difference, consider that 1,000,000 viruses could fit across the width of a human fingernail. Now let us look at each group individually, starting with animals. The animal kingdom is the one we are most familiar with and includes a huge variety of organisms such as humans, chickens, insects, and marine creatures like lionfish. Although the total number of animal species is unknown, scientists estimate it lies somewhere between 5 million and 10 million species. All animals share certain characteristics. They are multicellular, meaning they are composed of many cells. They are heterotrophs, meaning they must obtain energy by consuming other living things, and most animals reproduce sexually, meaning that offspring are produced through the combination of genetic material from 2 parents. For instance, a human adult is thought to be made up of approximately 40 trillion individual cells. Moving on to plants, this kingdom includes a wide range of organisms like redwood trees, bee orchids, tomato plants, and water lilies. There are an estimated 300,000 species of plants, and like animals, they are multicellular. However, unlike animals, plants are autotrophs, which means they produce their own energy from sunlight through the process of photosynthesis. Using structures called chloroplasts, plants do not need to consume other organisms to survive, which is a key difference from animals. Next is the fungi kingdom, which includes organisms such as mushrooms, molds, and yeast. Fungi can be either multicellular or unicellular. For example, mushrooms and molds are made up of many cells, while yeast used in baking is made up of only one cell, although some fungi might appear plant-like. They do not photosynthesize. Instead, they are heterotrophs and get their energy by feeding on other organisms. Like animals, they must obtain energy from external sources. However, fungi are often described more specifically as saprotrophs, which means they feed by secreting enzymes onto decaying organic matter outside their bodies. The enzymes break down the matter into simpler substances, which the fungi then absorb. In this way, fungi digest food externally before taking it in. Multicellular fungi often have a body called a mycelium, which is made up of tiny thread-like structures known as hyphae. Together, these hyphae form the main structure of the fungus. Although many fungi are harmless and some are beneficial, a few species can cause diseases in humans. For example, the fungus responsible for athlete's foot is a common pathogen. Now, let us consider the protists, also known as protists. This kingdom is diverse and includes many different types of single-celled organisms. Sometimes you may see other terms like protoctista, protists, or protester, but they all refer to the same group. Most protists are unicellular and vary greatly in how they function. Some, like chlorella and euglena, are similar to plant cells because they contain chloroplasts and can perform photosynthesis. Others, such as amoeba, resemble animal cells and must consume other organisms to gain energy. While most protists do not interact with humans, a few are pathogenic and can cause diseases. An example is the protist called Plasmodium, which is responsible for causing malaria in humans. Bacteria are next, And they're some of the most fascinating organisms. Due to their simplicity and abundance, bacteria are all unicellular and are classified as prokaryotes. They're found almost everywhere, including on your skin, inside your digestive system, in soil. And even in extreme environments, some bacteria are capable of photosynthesis, but none of them have chloroplasts. Most obtain energy by feeding on organic matter, either living or dead. For example, they might feed on a fallen leaf or on nutrients inside a living host. Scientists believe there are likely more bacterial species than the total number of species in all other kingdoms combined. While a few bacteria can cause diseases such as the Salmonella bacteria, which leads to food poisoning, the vast majority do not affect humans, and many are helpful. For instance, beneficial bacteria in the human gut help us digest food, produce vitamins, and maintain our overall health. Finally, we come to viruses, which are very different from the other groups. Viruses are not made of cells, they are not living, and they cannot survive or reproduce on their own. Instead, they are tiny particles composed of a protein coat that surrounds a small amount of genetic material, either DNA or RNA. Viruses cannot replicate unless they infect the living cells of another organism and take over the host's cellular machinery. Because they require a host to survive and reproduce, they are classified as parasites, which means they depend entirely on another living organism to complete their life cycle. Viruses can infect all types of living things, including animals, plants, fungi, protists, and bacteria, and in doing so, they always cause harm, which is why all viruses are considered pathogens. Examples of well-known viruses include the influenza virus, which causes flu, the tobacco mosaic virus, which affects tomato and tobacco plants, the human immunodeficiency virus known as HIV, which can lead to acquired immunodeficiency syndrome or AIDS, and of course, the coronavirus responsible for the global pandemic of COVID-19. To sum up today's lesson, the most important takeaway is to develop a general understanding of how animals, plants, fungi, protists, bacteria, and viruses differ from each other in terms of structure, function, reproduction, and nutrition. There was a lot of detail, but the key idea is to grasp the distinctions rather than memorize every fact. If you found this helpful, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, as it really helps us grow, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.